The sharpest blade isn't in your hand, it's in your mouth. And more kings have fallen to a loose tongue than to a sword. Have you ever walked away from a conversation and felt an icy regret in your gut? That haunting feeling that your own words just handed your enemy the ammunition. The pain comes not from what others did, but from the betrayal of your own lips. If you want to survive, if you want to dominate, you must master your mouth or be destroyed by it. This moment of recognition arrives differently for everyone, but it always arrives with the same brutal clarity. The executive who casually mentions their company's financial struggles to a competitor, the politician who reveals their true opinion when they think the cameras are off, the individual who confesses their deepest insecurities to someone who later uses them as weapons. In each case, the destruction doesn't come from external forces but from internal betrayal. Your own tongue becomes the instrument of your downfall, more dangerous than any enemy because it operates from within your defenses, striking when you're least guarded. This isn't about politeness or social skills. This is about survival, about power. To Machiavelli, the tongue is both tool and trap. Weak men speak to be understood. Powerful men speak to mislead, to conceal, to frame. Machiavelli understood that in a world where information is power, the person who controls the flow of information controls the outcome of conflicts. But controlling information isn't just about what you learn about others. It's about what you prevent others from learning about you. Every word you speak is a piece of intelligence you're giving to potential adversaries. Every revelation is a weakness exposed. Every honest expression is a vulnerability created. The person who speaks without calculation is like a general who reveals his battle plans to enemy spies. This is not a guide to honesty, it's a manual for control. Machiavelli didn't fear lies, he feared exposure. Silence is strategy, speech is ammunition, and the wrong sentence can collapse an empire. This is about ruling reality, not comforting egos. The modern world makes this challenge infinitely more complex than it was in Machiavelli's time. We live in an age of constant communication, where silence is often interpreted as rudeness or disengagement. We're pressured to share our thoughts, feelings, and experiences across multiple platforms and in countless conversations every day. But this pressure is exactly what makes mastery of speech so valuable. In a world where everyone else is oversharing, the person who speaks with precision and purpose gains enormous advantage. While others hemorrhage information, you gather it. While they expose their weaknesses, you conceal your strengths. While they react emotionally, you respond strategically. Rule 1. Never reveal your intentions. Machiavelli's law is ruthless. The honest man is the easiest to anticipate and the easiest to destroy. Historical case. Cesare Borgia never revealed his ambition. Every smile hid a calculation. When he struck, no one could claim they saw it coming. Borgia's genius lay not in his brutality, which was common enough in Renaissance Italy, but in his inscrutability. His enemies could never predict his moves because they never understood his true objectives. Was he seeking to expand his territory, eliminate rivals, or consolidate existing power? The uncertainty paralyzed his opponents while he maneuvered freely. This principle operates at every level of human interaction. In business negotiations, the person who reveals their true needs and limitations first inevitably gets the worst deal. In political campaigns, the candidate whose positions are completely predictable gives opponents every advantage in preparation and strategy. In personal relationships, the individual whose motivations are transparent loses the ability to surprise, delight, or influence effectively. The temptation to reveal intentions comes from multiple sources. Sometimes it's a desire for validation, wanting others to understand and approve of your goals. Sometimes it's a misguided attempt at building trust through transparency. Sometimes it's simply the human need to share excitement about future plans. But each revelation narrows your options and expands your opponent's ability to interfere with your success. The business leader who announces their expansion plans gives competitors time to block key partnerships or bid up essential resources. The individual who shares their romantic interests gives rivals opportunity to sabotage or intercept. Say less. Let others project their wishes onto your silence. This doesn't mean becoming mysterious for its own sake, which can appear theatrical and artificial. It means being selective about what you reveal and strategic about when you reveal it. Share information when it serves your purposes, not when it satisfies your emotions or meets others' expectations. The most effective approach is to master the art of seeming transparent while actually revealing nothing essential. You can be warm, engaging, and communicative while still keeping your true intentions hidden. People can feel they know you well without actually understanding what you're planning or why. Rule 2. Don't confess weakness. Self-deprecation is praised by the powerless. In the corridors of survival, weakness invites predation. Modern culture has created a dangerous mythology around vulnerability and authenticity that directly contradicts the realities of competitive environments. We're told that admitting weaknesses shows strength, that confessing doubts demonstrates humility, that revealing struggles creates connection. These may be valuable approaches in therapeutic settings or intimate personal relationships, but they're catastrophic strategies in any context where others might use that information against you. The job candidate who admits to struggling with time management won't get hired. The leader who confesses uncertainty about company direction will face challenges to their authority. The individual who reveals their insecurities will find them exploited by those seeking advantage. Napoleon never admitted fear, even when defeat was one march away. His soldiers believed in victory because he denied them doubt. Napoleon's psychological mastery extended far beyond military strategy. He understood that leadership is fundamentally about managing the mental state of followers, and that followers take their emotional cues from leaders. If Napoleon had admitted his fears about impossible odds, his soldiers would have absorbed those fears and performed accordingly. Instead, he projected absolute confidence even in the darkest moments, which gave his forces a psychological advantage that often proved decisive. His enemies might outnumber him, outposition him, or out-resource him, but they couldn't match the morale of troops who believed their leader was invincible. This principle applies beyond military contexts. The CEO who admits to doubting the company's strategy will see that doubt reflected in employee performance and investor confidence. The parent who constantly expresses anxiety about parenting decisions will raise anxious children. The negotiator who reveals uncertainty about their position will face increasingly aggressive demands. Your doubts are currency. Spend them in private, never in public. This requires developing the ability to separate your internal experience from your external presentation. You can acknowledge weaknesses privately, work on them systematically, and even discuss them with carefully selected advisors or mentors. But you cannot broadcast them to anyone who might use that information to your detriment. The key is building a small circle of truly trusted advisors with whom you can be completely honest, while maintaining strategic opacity with everyone else. This allows you to get the benefits of honest self-assessment without the costs of public vulnerability. Rule 3. Don't speak ill of the absent. Criticizing others behind their back creates enemies you'll never see coming. In the Renaissance courts, gossip was the currency of ruin. This rule addresses one of the most common and destructive communication patterns in any competitive environment. The temptation to criticize absent parties is almost irresistible because it seems to offer multiple benefits. It bonds you with present listeners through shared negativity. It positions you as superior to the person being criticized, and it provides emotional relief from frustrations you might feel. But these apparent benefits are illusions that mask genuine dangers. When you criticize someone in their absence, you're essentially teaching everyone present that you'll do the same to them when they're not around. This destroys trust and creates defensive postures that make genuine collaboration impossible. More dangerously, your critical comments will almost inevitably reach the person you criticized, usually in exaggerated form. This creates an enemy who has both motive for revenge and evidence of your disloyalty to share with others. Modern CEOs like Tim Cook know this. Silence breeds trust. Loose talk breeds revolt. Cook's approach to communication exemplifies strategic restraint. He rarely makes public statements about competitors, former employees, or internal company conflicts. When he does address criticism or challenges, he focuses on Apple's positive direction rather than attacking alternatives. This approach builds a reputation for discretion that makes people more willing to share sensitive information with him, more comfortable working under his leadership, and more confident that their own mistakes or struggles won't become public entertainment. The contrast is stark when compared to leaders who regularly criticize others publicly. Their organizations become politicized environments where people spend more energy protecting themselves from their leader's tongue than focusing on productive work. Let the absent defend themselves. Your silence is your escape. This doesn't mean never addressing problems or conflicts, but it means doing so directly with the people involved, rather than broadcasting your complaints to uninvolved parties. If someone's performance is inadequate, address it with them and their direct supervisor, not with your peers. If you disagree with a decision, take it up with the decision maker, not with others who have no power to change it. When others try to draw you into criticism of absent parties, redirect the conversation toward solutions or simply decline to participate. I'd rather discuss that with them directly, or I don't have enough information to comment, are responses that protect you while maintaining relationships. Rule 4. Flattery is ammunition, but use it like poison. Too much flattery exposes your motives. Cleopatra praised her targets sparingly, making each word unforgettable and each man desperate for more. Cleopatra's legendary ability to influence powerful men wasn't based on physical beauty alone, but on her sophisticated understanding of psychological manipulation. She understood that excessive praise becomes meaningless while rare, well-timed compliments become addictive. When she praised Julius Caesar's military genius, it carried weight because she wasn't constantly showering him with compliments. When she acknowledged Mark Antony's political acumen, it felt significant because her approval seemed discriminating rather than automatic. This scarcity principle transforms praise from social lubricant into psychological weapon. The person who compliments everyone on everything is ignored because their praise has no value. But the individual known for high standards makes their rare approval precious. Modern research in behavioral psychology confirms this intuition. Intermittent reinforcement creates stronger behavioral patterns than constant reinforcement. The gambling addict continues playing not because they win consistently, but because they win unpredictably. The person seeking approval becomes more motivated by occasional praise than by constant validation. Be rare with praise. Sprinkle it as a drug, not an obligation. This requires discipline because the instinct is often to over-compliment in order to build rapport or demonstrate appreciation. But this instinct works against your strategic interests by devaluing your approval and revealing your desire to be liked. Instead, develop a reputation for being someone whose praise means something. When you do offer compliments, make them specific and earned. Focus on achievements or qualities that genuinely deserve recognition rather than generic positivity. The goal is to become someone whose approval others seek, rather than someone seeking others' approval. This shift in dynamic gives you influence over their behavior and emotional state while protecting your own independence. Rule 5. Never undermine yourself. Self-mockery is comedy for the crowd, but those in power never reveal self-doubt, even as a joke. Self-deprecating humor seems harmless and even endearing, but it programs listeners to think less of you in ways that compound over time. Each joke at your own expense gives others permission to view you as less competent, less serious, or less worthy of respect. This is particularly dangerous because self-mockery often feels like a safe way to acknowledge weaknesses while maintaining control of the narrative. By making fun of yourself first, you seem to disarm potential critics and demonstrate secure confidence. But the opposite effect actually occurs. Others take their cues about how to treat you from how you treat yourself. If you consistently present yourself as flawed, foolish, or inadequate, even in jest, they'll internalize that assessment and respond accordingly. Winston Churchill, master of rhetoric, wrapped every admission in irony, a shield against attack. Churchill's approach illustrates the sophisticated alternative to crude self-mockery. When he needed to acknowledge mistakes or limitations, he did so with wit that actually enhanced rather than diminished his stature. His self-deprecation was so obviously ironic that it highlighted his strengths while seeming to minimize them. For example, when criticized for changing political parties, he responded, "Anyone can rat, but it takes a certain amount of ingenuity to re-rat." This acknowledges the criticism while reframing it as evidence of his strategic flexibility rather than unprincipled opportunism. The key is that Churchill's self-mockery actually communicated confidence and competence rather than genuine self-doubt. He was making fun of his critics' perceptions, not genuinely undermining his own position. When in doubt, misdirect and deflect. Rather than making yourself the target of humor, redirect attention toward situations, systems, or general human foibles. Instead of, "I'm terrible at public speaking," try, "These microphones seem designed to make everyone sound ridiculous." Instead of, "I have no idea what I'm doing," try, "This situation would challenge anyone." This protects your reputation while still acknowledging challenges in ways that others can relate to and appreciate. Rule 6. Don't boast. Let others write your legend. The more you speak, the more you reduce your mystery. Machiavelli warned, "Men judge by what is seen and heard." Napoleon let his enemies tell stories of his prowess, inflating his myth. Napoleon's genius extended beyond military strategy to include psychological warfare on a massive scale. He understood that reputation could be as powerful as reality, and that the most effective reputation was one that seemed to arise independently rather than being self-promoted. When Napoleon's enemies described his victories, they often exaggerated both his tactical brilliance and his army's capabilities, because doing so explained their own defeats. A loss to an average general reflects poorly on the loser, but a loss to a military genius is understandable and even honorable. This created a feedback loop where Napoleon's reputation grew stronger with each conflict, regardless of the actual outcome. His opponents were psychologically invested in maintaining his legendary status because it protected their own reputations. The same principle applies in any competitive environment. The business leader whose success is acknowledged by competitors carries more credibility than one who constantly promotes their own achievements. The expert whose knowledge is recognized by peers has more authority than one who claims expertise directly. Let your silence become legend. This requires the discipline to resist the immediate gratification of self-promotion in favor of the long-term benefits of mysteriously demonstrated competence. Instead of telling people how good you are, focus on doing things that make your competence impossible to ignore. When others praise your work, accept it gracefully without expanding on it. When they ask about your methods, share interesting details without revealing everything. When they speculate about your capabilities, neither confirm nor deny, but let their curiosity build your mystique. The goal is to become someone others talk about rather than someone who talks about themselves. This shift positions you as the subject of conversation rather than a participant in it, which is always a more powerful position. Rule 7. Don't betray secrets. A single confession can cost you an empire. Rasputin survived Imperial Russia because he heard more than he spoke. His mysteries outlived his enemies. Rasputin's extraordinary influence over the Russian royal family wasn't based solely on his supposed mystical powers or his relationship with the Tsarina. It was based on his reputation as someone who could be trusted with the most sensitive information while revealing nothing that might compromise his sources. This reputation made him invaluable to people who had dangerous secrets to protect. They could confide in him without fear that their revelations would be used against them or shared with their enemies. This access to confidential information gave him knowledge that translated directly into political power. The moment he had begun revealing secrets, his network of informants would have dried up and his influence would have evaporated. His power depended entirely on his ability to keep confidences even under extreme pressure. Keep confidences. Let secrets die on your tongue. In the modern world, information moves faster and spreads wider than ever before. A secret shared with the wrong person can be broadcast globally within hours. This makes discretion not just valuable but essential for anyone seeking to build networks of trust and influence. People will test your discretion with relatively minor secrets before trusting you with truly important information. Pass these tests consistently, and you'll gain access to intelligence that provides enormous strategic advantages. Fail them, and you'll be excluded from important conversations permanently. The key is understanding that keeping secrets isn't just about protecting others. It's about protecting your own reputation as someone worth confiding in. Each time you reveal something told to you in confidence, you advertise that you're not trustworthy with sensitive information. This means sometimes knowing things you cannot act on directly, which requires emotional discipline. But the long-term benefits of being seen as completely trustworthy far outweigh the short-term frustration of not being able to use every piece of information immediately. Rule 8. Evade when questioned. Deflect with precision. Angela Merkel, the Sphinx of Europe, answered questions with riddles and half-truths. Her power grew from what she didn't say. Merkel's communication style frustrated journalists, political opponents, and even allies. But it served her strategic purposes perfectly. By never fully revealing her thinking or committing to positions before she was ready, she maintained maximum flexibility while forcing others to guess at her intentions. This approach prevented opponents from preparing effective counter-strategies and allies from taking her support for granted. Everyone had to keep negotiating with her because no one could be certain where she stood on any issue until she chose to reveal her position. Her evasiveness wasn't random or defensive, it was surgical. She would answer the parts of questions that served her purposes, while redirecting attention away from areas where revelation might limit her options. Never answer until you know the intention behind the question. Most people respond to questions automatically, as if honesty compelled immediate and complete responses. But questions often carry hidden agendas. The person asking may be gathering intelligence for competitive purposes, testing your consistency with previous statements, or trying to get you to commit to positions that serve their interests. Before responding to any significant question, pause to consider what the questioner hopes to accomplish. Are they seeking information that might be used against you? Are they trying to get you to commit to something prematurely? Are they testing your knowledge or authority? Once you understand their agenda, you can craft responses that serve your purposes rather than theirs. This might mean answering a different question than the one asked, requesting clarification that reveals their motivations, or simply declining to answer until you have more information. The sophisticated communicator controls not just what they say, but what conversations they participate in, and on what terms. Rule 9. Don't try to be the funniest in the room. Machiavelli feared humor. It lowers status and makes you vulnerable to mockery. Humor creates a complex social dynamic that can either enhance or diminish your position, depending on how it's employed. The person desperately trying to be funny often appears needy for approval and willing to sacrifice dignity for attention. This neediness signals low status and invites others to view you as entertainment rather than authority. Additionally, failed attempts at humor are more damaging to reputation than failed attempts at seriousness. When a serious comment falls flat, it might be seen as boring or irrelevant. When a joke falls flat, it suggests poor judgment, social awkwardness, or desperation for attention. Julius Caesar avoided jokes, knowing one misplaced laugh could weaken his stance before rivals. Caesar understood that his authority depended on others taking him seriously, and that humor could undermine this perception in ways that were difficult to reverse. In the intensely competitive environment of Roman politics, any sign of weakness or frivolity would be exploited by ambitious rivals. This doesn't mean Caesar was humorless or that he couldn't appreciate wit when others displayed it, but he was disciplined about when and how he used humor, ensuring that it served his strategic purposes rather than simply relieving social tension. Let others chase the crowd. Remain above frivolity. This principle is particularly important in professional environments where humor is often used as a way to build rapport but can backfire by undermining credibility. The lawyer who jokes too much in court may entertain the jury but lose their respect. The manager who constantly tries to be funny may be liked but not respected by subordinates. The strategic approach is to use humor sparingly and purposefully, ensuring that it enhances rather than diminishes your position. When you do use humor, make sure it demonstrates insight or confidence rather than neediness or insecurity. Rule 10. When in doubt, choose silence. History's greatest survivors were silent strategists. The less said, the fewer cliffs to fall from. Silence is perhaps the most undervalued communication tool in the modern world. We live in a culture that interprets silence as disengagement, rudeness, or lack of intelligence. But silence can be the most powerful response in many situations because it forces others to reveal their positions while keeping yours hidden. When someone makes an unreasonable demand, silence often generates a better offer without any negotiation on your part. When someone criticizes you unfairly, silence can make them appear petty while making you appear dignified. When someone asks an inappropriate question, silence communicates that the question itself is problematic. Steve Jobs' rare interviews had more impact than 1,000 speeches from his rivals. Jobs understood that scarcity creates value in communication, just as it does in products. By speaking publicly only when he had something genuinely important to say, he ensured that his words carried weight and received attention. Each carefully crafted presentation became an event that shaped entire industries. The contrast with leaders who constantly seek media attention is instructive. The more frequently someone speaks publicly, the less impact each individual statement carries. Eventually, their words become background noise that people ignore rather than carefully considered messages that influence behavior. When words weigh too much, let silence carry your will. This requires developing comfort with social discomfort, because silence often creates tension that others will try to fill with their own words. But this tension works in your favor by encouraging others to reveal information, make concessions, or clarify their positions without any effort on your part. The key is learning to distinguish between productive silence and avoidant silence. Productive silence serves your strategic purposes by gathering information or creating psychological pressure. Avoidant silence stems from fear or uncertainty and typically weakens your position. Every word you utter builds your empire or condemns it. Will you choose clarity over comfort, or let your own mouth become your undoing? The fundamental choice is between the immediate gratification of expressing yourself freely and the long-term benefits of communicating strategically. Most people choose immediate gratification because strategic communication requires discipline, forethought, and the willingness to accept social discomfort in service of larger goals. But this choice determines whether you become someone who influences events or someone who reacts to events created by others. It determines whether you build power or surrender it through careless revelation. The path forward requires treating every conversation as a strategic encounter where your words either advance your interests or compromise them. This doesn't mean becoming manipulative or dishonest, but it does mean becoming intentional about what you reveal. When you reveal it, and to whom? Master your tongue, and you master your fate. Let it run wild, and it will destroy everything you've built, one careless word at a time.